Good morning. I'm Ludwig Schiebel. I coordinate Climate Alliance in Italy. Climate Alliance is a network of cities and towns, and I will talk the next minutes about the role, how I see the role of local entities, cities, towns, regional governments for the protection of Earth's atmosphere. Climate Alliance has about 1,800 members in 28 European countries, about 22% of the population. What is specific with Climate Alliance is that we have quantitative goals for our members. Our members commit themselves to reducing by 10% their CO2 emissions every 5 years and to cut them into half by 2030. When we decided on that in the year 2000, we were in the vanguard of commitments to reducing CO2 emissions. It was a very ambitious goal to say we reduce by 10% every 5 years. And as it turned out, that was in 2000. In 2008, the European Commission said in their energy and climate package, in the famous 2020 plan, let's reduce by 2020 20%. So that was exactly in line with what we were doing. 8 years later, the European Union formulated the same commitments that we had made. We said 10% every 5 years. They said 20% in 10 years. So we were exactly in line with the European Union. We were not ambitious anymore. We were mainstream. Now we find ourselves in the strange situation that in her speech on the State of the Union, of the European Union, the president of the Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, said, let's reduce 55% by 2030. So 55% by 2030 means like 10%, 11% every 2 years. So it's much more ambitious than we were in the year 2000. We are glad about that, and we will discuss that in our membership meeting, how we shall deal with our commitment. From the very beginning, our partners were the indigenous people from the Amazon region, and I'm not going to deal on that with that issue. It's a different discourse. What are we doing to help our partners in the rainforest to preserve their living space? Instead, as I said, I will talk about local climate policies in Europe. If you look at the Paris Accord, that was in 2015, by now it's 5 years ago. Afterwards, the reactions were very mixed. Many people said, well, the glass is half full. Others said, no, the glass is half empty. Somebody said the glass is broken. I think, and then Sergio Andres, the director of Kyoto Club, might say more about that. I think the UN delivered the best accord conceivable. What usually is a misunderstanding with many organizations is the character of the international process. The international process, yes, the result can be internationally legally binding accords like the Paris Accord. It's a binding international treaty, but it's true also at the same time that the international community has no means whatsoever to force its members to adhere to their own commitments. So what the international process does is it formulates the guardrails, it creates the framework for the actors. And the framework it creates, in good part, is not something the United Nations thought up or which the national governments thought up. It's a compromise between forces that are pushing from below, vested interests. It's a complex interplay, and what comes out is a framework, is as I said, a guardrail. And by the way, the 2% goal already was agreed upon in a binding way in 2009, 6 years before Paris, what in a conference of parties that usually is considered a failure. I don't think it was a failure. It said, let's stay within below 2 degrees, and it didn't say anything specific how the international community is going to go about it. The Paris Accord is something more specific. Now, what does that mean for the actors, for the various actors? It means that they should become active to close the gap between what needs to be achieved in terms of CO2 reductions of greenhouse gases, and what is the probable outcome if, with business as usual, with various scenarios. And here you see the famous emission gap report, which comes out every year and looks at the different scenarios to stay from the International Panel on Climate Change, to stay within a 1.5 degree range, 1.8, 2, and the different scenarios of policies. And as you can see, there remains considerable gap to stay within the 2 degree limit, let alone the 1.5 degree range. This I'm not going to go into. What I want to talk for a moment is what is the role of local governments as one of the actors? How to fill that gap? The reduction of emissions in and by itself is not a very attractive goal. I mean, to convince citizens to change in their everyday lives, to change their mobility patterns and not go by car, but by public transport, by foot, by bicycle, to change their habits in heating and cooling and consuming, to do that because of emissions, that's hard to convince. My argument will be, or is, that reducing the greenhouse gas emissions in the local territory improves the quality of life of the people who live there. And the framework for this, or one important framework, but perhaps the most important framework, are the Sustainable Development Goals, which the United Nations passed in 2015, and which also Ursula von der Leyen, our President of the European Commission, in her speech called the framework which she and the Commission will refer to in their policies the next 10 years. So what I'm saying, CO2 reduction is a guiding variable. You look at the activities you have in mind and you see if they increase CO2 emissions, leave them the same, or reduce them. It's a guiding variable to see if you're on the right track. But the activities have to be developed by the various actors. Who are the actors? The actors are on an international level. This is, for example, the governor of California, Jerry Brown, ex-governor of California, Jerry Brown, with the governor of Baden-Württemberg, a green governor in Germany, Winfried Kretschmann, who formulated together a memorandum of understanding where many regions all over the world have here. On the right, you see the Greenpeace doing the action during the Paris conference, raising public attention through spectacular actions. Yeah. So there are a fair number of actors. Top down, it's the nations, the World Bank, the European Union, the national governments, the mega cities, the churches, big business. From the bottom up, it's the social movements, Fridays for Future, Extinction Rebellion, local governments, civil society, the global middle and upper class, and innovative enterprises. And it's absolutely useless, it's destructive to kind of juxtapose those actors. That even happens with my own field of action. Let's say Greenpeace, after the speech of Ursula von der Leyen, where she says we are going to reduce by 55% the CO2 emissions by 2030, they said, well, that's really only the job half done was their formulation. We really need 65%. And I'm not convinced that who offers the most is going to get us nearer to the solution. I think it could be part of the problem. Instead, that each of those actors, of course, has to be critical of what are doing others, but mainly has to understand what can I contribute to solve the problem of the century, which is the threat of climate change. And as I said, the good news is that at the local level, reducing CO2 emissions, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and moving ahead local integrated sustainable development largely or nearly completely coincides. Cities that have a good public transport system, you live better in than in cities that have a bad public transport system. We will look at it a little more in detail. In Europe, the cities in this period have been 2008, 2020, have been formulating their local climate policy in sustainable energy action plans. This was in the context of the Covenant of Mayors. The Covenant of Mayors by now has reached 10,000 cities and towns, and many of them now have adhered to the new covenant for 20 and 30. And so this is one important European initiative where the European Union gives guidance to local governments, but above all creates a framework within which those governments monitor their emissions, look at the different sectors, traffic, production, households, and their own emissions as a city government, and then formulate their actions. What actions? Producing energy from renewable resources. This, for example, we are in southern Germany. The parents got together and financed the photovoltaic panels on the school of their children. They did not only do that for reducing CO2 emissions, but they get a very nice feed-in tariff, so they are making money from doing that. That's what I mean. I mean, it's not just all idealism and saving the world. It's also economic activities. Energy efficiency is an economic activity that is profitable, because the energy you save, be it for heating or for cooling, pays back your investment and also gives you a profit. Cogeneration, the combined heat and power, is an important bridge towards renewables. Better still, if the plant is being driven by renewable energy. The most difficult subject is that of mobility. Here we have been making huge progress in the last months, in good part because of the COVID pandemic, but that was an accelerator that pushed developments that are underway anyway. People correctly hesitate to use public transport. You cannot shift from public transport to individual motorized transport cars, then the city would go in tilt. So if you look at Paris, Paris is becoming rapidly a city for pedestrians, for bicycles, and many of the main arteries of that city have been closed to cars, to motorized traffic. Rue de Tivoli, Boulevard Saint-Michel, unimaginable even a year or 2 years ago. And not only, but the mayor of Paris, Hidalgo, has been re-elected recently with a very comfortable majority. It means the citizens of Paris have not only accepted, but are in favor of these dramatic changes in mobility in this important city. I mean, it's the capital of France, right? Bilbao has introduced 30 kilometers per hour speed limit for the whole municipal territory. At the moment where you enter into it's a city of more than 300,000 people, you enter the territory of Bilbao, 30 kilometers an hour and not 1 kilometer more, and they enforce it, which means better convivence, better living together between pedestrians, bicycles, and cars. In my city, Castello, we have elaborated an urban sustainable mobility plan, still in the context of the Covenant of Mayors. Sustainable urban development. We are in Tübingen, in a town in the south of Germany, a former industrial site being transformed into an ecological city quarter with very low energy demand, the use of photovoltaic, a very advanced concept for water, also for wastewater, and a very high living quality with acceptable prices. Urban green, not only because it's good for the eye, but because it's good against heat islands. And in fact, many cities have adopted, also in the context of their sustainable energy and climate action plans, very ambitious policies of bringing green back into the city, be it for mitigation, absorption of CO2 emission, be it for adaptation, reducing the temperature, cooling down the city center. Okay, so my argument has been that if you propose to people, let's reduce CO2 emissions, they may not be so enthusiastic. If you talk about safer communities in which you can live better, this may be much more attractive. So globally, the role of local governments is that they are one actor in their own right. They are not just executive assistants for national or international goals. Local communities carry ahead their own policy of an integrated local sustainable development, and thus contribute to the global objectives. Thank you very much.
So good morning to everybody. Günaydin for those following from Turkey. The topic, my contribution as the one in February, is from the Kyoto Protocol to the Paris Agreement. Few words about our organization, which was created in 1999. It brings together business companies, which is something peculiar, local municipalities and governments and associations, but mostly so-called progressive business companies. It's over 133 of them engaged in reaching the Kyoto Protocol targets. You know that the Kyoto Protocol is in force until this year, 2020. And then, of course, the Paris Agreement. And we do several activities, awareness-raising activities, but also we prepare policy proposals for national, EU, and within the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change global public decision makers to make policies more and more environmental friendly. Now, Kyoto Protocol, you find everything on the link which is reproduced on this slide, is an international agreement, the first, in fact, international agreement adopted in 1997 and entered into force in 2005 to cut greenhouse gas emissions but in industrialized regions only. And that's the major difference between the Kyoto Protocol, which was limited to the industrialized areas of the planet, so North America, Europe, Russia, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and the Paris Agreement, which is binding for all countries in the world. The climate change is recognized, and I took here the World Economic Forum, the bad guys, so to speak, from because they represent the big economic and fossil fuel lobbies, including finance. Even then, even the World Economic Forum, in its global risks report for this year, as you can see, indicates climate biodiversity loss as one of the global risks for our Earth. So the awareness has been growing a lot, and as Carl Ludwig was mentioning, we do need this alliance, bottom up and top down, if we want to solve this very serious situation we are facing. Now, through the Doha Amendment, the Kyoto Protocol validity was prolonged for the second commitment period, which goes until December 31st of this year. And we can say that the Kyoto Protocol targets have been reached. Now, what's the problem with that? The problem is that the Kyoto Protocol targets are based on the scientific community's knowledge, too limited to efficiently, effectively combat climate change. So we need more ambition, and we need to go beyond the Kyoto Protocol targets, however, recognizing, of course, the importance of the Kyoto Protocol, because, as I said earlier, it's been the first international treaty on climate change. Climate change impacts are very serious. Here you have the forecasts by the the scientific body of the United Nations. IPCC stands for Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which in the meantime brings together over 3,000 universities all over the world, monitoring developments in climate and making recommendations and proposals for decision makers. If we continue with the business as usual, as you can see, by the end of the century, the average global mean temperature is forecasted to be 6 degrees Celsius higher than beginning of the century. Now, to be very clear, this means in the Gulf, the Arabian or Persian Gulf, a daily average temperature of 70 degrees Celsius, so it's practically the impossibility of human life. In the Mediterranean, it would mean, and we have been witnessing this already, so climate change impacts do not belong to the future. They are already here with us in a very dramatic way. In these past few days in Italy, in the Alps, we had once again not only damages but dead people due to so-called extreme meteorological events like floodings and destroying everything which the water in this specific case found on its way. So we are talking about very serious threats, and we know that also in Turkey, in several areas of Turkey, the impacts are already visible. Now, the temperatures keep increasing. You have here the 10 hottest years on record globally. There was a very high increase in 2016, but also last year and the previous years have constantly been warmer and hotter than before. So global warming is unfortunately with us. Now, the Paris Agreement, the engagement by all governments of the world signing the agreement has been to keep the global warming within, so lower than the +2 degrees, which is the emergency increase, which scientific world says with 2 degrees, +2 degrees, we will have irreversible effects, which is the big risk. So the world countries in 2015 agreed to keep global warming by, maximum by 2 degrees, possibly by 1 + 5 degrees by the end of the centuries. Now, as of today, 189 countries of the 197 active parties to the Convention on Climate Change have ratified the Paris Agreement. Unfortunately, Turkey is not. Turkey is still one of the 8 countries which signed the agreement but did not ratify it. But of course, we know that ratification is not enough because threats are very big. We know the causes of climate change, and this slide brings the sources visually together. We know the solution, we know the impact, so we need to act because it's not a technical or technological issue. And we know the various scenarios. What happens if the world global mean temperature becomes 2 degrees higher, 3 degrees or 4 degrees higher, which, by the way, would be incompatible with an organized global community. We know what we need to do. Carl Ludwig mentioned already some of the measures, and here you have how we can limit global warming to 1.5 increase. by the way, all decisions which would have, and in this they are win-win solutions, a positive impact on the economy, creating new jobs, and improving the daily quality of life of all of us. So win-win is what we need. Of course, we know that the lobby and power of the fossil fuels companies and all those involved, just if you think traditional car manufacturing and oil and gas, very strong, but we need to help them changing their business. And we have excellent examples in Italy. Enel, one of the biggest energy groups at world level, has drastically changed its priorities towards decarbonized business, and it's making huge profits anyway. So that's one example to show that it is possible to change, and we need to push also all the other oil and carbon fossil fuel giants in that direction. It was mentioned European Union, which keeps increasing its reduction targets. Energy efficiency is at the core of our demands to the European institutions, and with pleasure I also underline last September 16 speech of the European Commission President in the European Parliament, where she proposed greater reductions in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, up to 55%, with billions, in fact, of investments planned. And we do hope that this proposal by the President of the European Commission will be approved. At the moment, it is a proposal only, and we need facts, not just proposals and words. Sustainable development goals are key in reaching decarbonized economies, and the European Green Deal is a big sign of hope for us. We need to be careful about greenwashing, because we already saw amendments in the European Parliament coming in and arguing that, for example, gas should be further supported in spite of its being fossil fuel. The argument is, yes, it's a fossil fuel, but not so dangerous as coal, for example, which in our opinion is no good argument to keep supporting also gas, which just like coal, oil, and all the other fossil fuels should be phased out now without further ado. We think demonstrations are very nice, and we've been very helpful, and we've been supporting the Friday's global climate strikes. We do hope they will continue in spite of COVID-19 pandemics. Divest, take away money from fossil fuels. You see that it's a huge movement worldwide, with as of today, you find all this data online, 14.48 trillions of dollars divested, so taken away from fossil fuels towards renewable energy sources and energy efficiency. And by the way, also the World Bank and the European Investment Bank have agreed similar decisions for the coming years, which is an excellent sign for the climate of all of us. Thank you very much for your attention, and for any question, I remain at your disposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sergio and Carl Ludwig, for your speech. We have one question now. and is how much the corona pandemic of reducing emission of GHS gas emission?
In the first months, we were looking at something like 12 to something like more than 10% reduction. I think the absolute numbers are not so much important. Sergio, help me with how you see things. They are not so much important. What is more important is that the corona pandemic shows that drastic actions can be taken in a very short time that do bring down the CO2 emissions and improve air quality. For above all, you may have seen the pictures of some Indian cities, Mumbai, where some Chinese cities, where now, if you look at it, it's fresh and clear, and historically you have difficulties to see the other side of the street. So one should be very careful, but of course, as environmentalists, we do look with a certain satisfaction. I mean, still being very much aware of the very high costs in human lives and economic losses. We do look with a certain satisfaction at what is possible in a relatively short time to drastically reduce CO2 emissions. Sorry that I don't have any more precise quantitative data. Do you, Sergio?
No, I think those available you mentioned, I think visually it was very interesting, but we could see it also in our cities. I mean, Rome in March and April was like a ghost town. You know, there was no incredibly beautiful more than ever, but air in big Italian cities was dramatically, the air quality improved, and I think it could be felt somehow, but it was indeed a dramatic decrease of pollution and improvement in air quality. And I think the point is the one you made, because it was the proof that you can improve the situation even in very short time. But of course, this was due to the pandemic, which we don't wish to anybody, and we do hope will be overcome very shortly. But let's say it was a proof of the possibility in very short time to improve the situation.
Okay, thank you. And we have 3-4 more questions. The first one is, isn't it too early to conclude that 2020 is +3 years back and cooler than 2019? It was 35 degrees centigrade in North Turkey on October 4th. We do not know what autumn will bring.
Exactly. So it's not really a question, it's an affirmation which I would agree with. It's too early to say anything how 2020 will turn out. In any event, we are talking about climate, we are not talking about the weather, and certainly, and that isn't meant with the comment that the person made, the corona pandemic versus and the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, even if only by a few points, is not going to have any immediate effect on the climate.
Okay, thank you. Hello, can you give practical project ideas for reducing greenhouse gas in cities?
Practical projects where the greenhouse gas emissions were reduced in cities?
Yes. Ideas,
suggestions, ideas. I think
yes.
you have, as Climate Alliance, lots of examples, no, of success stories in cities. Maybe we can. I leave you the floor, but maybe the best thing would be to give a reference of a link or a website where success stories in cities may be found.
Good proposal. You do find something on the website of Climate Alliance. That's www.climatealliance.org. There we have for example, the climate compass, which we developed over the years, where you can see what are possible actions of cities, and it's always amazing to see in how many fields climate activities are possible and fruitful. The moment when you say good practices, this is such a vast field. I mean, are we talking about mobility? Are we talking about energy efficiency? Are we talking about renewable energy? Is it innovative technological solutions, or is the social aspect important? Like, for example, the photovoltaic roof I showed from Tübingen, which is in the south of Germany, a town of some 70,000 people. What I found interesting was not so much the technological solution. Photovoltaics nowadays is a very mainstream solution, but the fact that the parents got together and had this photovoltaic panels put on the roof, so the social dimension. What I'm saying is there's not one single place where you can find good practices.
Sorry, Carla, the case of Freiburg, however, no? In Germany, also in southern, is an excellent example of a city. We could advise the person who asked the question to see. It's known as the green capital of Europe, no? And they have with the website of Freiburg.
One other place to look where you find very many good practices, also separated by subject areas, is the policy learning platform of the European program Interreg Europe. Maybe we should write that somewhere. There's a policy learning platform, and there the European Commission puts good practices. The projects that are being made in that program, Interreg Europe, they have to do with dialogues between regions, projects which they carry ahead, and the Commission then selects the best practices and puts them on the platform.
Okay, thank you. There is no more questions. In the meantime, I found some rough figures about the coronavirus during the coronavirus pandemic, reduction of CO2 from Carbon Brief. They estimate for 2020 around less 4% of reduction of emission in compare with 2019. And the target...
I was exaggerating wildly, but it's only 4%.
4%, yes. The target should be less 6% per year to get the 1.5 less reduction for the temperature. Okay, there is another question in the meantime. Okay, I'm going to read. How do you find the international economic system fight against the climate crisis?
Well, personally, I think the slide on the World Economic Forum outlook for this year summarizes a little bit the approach. So on one side, there has been and there is a growing awareness of what is meant usually by international economic system about how serious the situation is. On the other hand, the answer, the facts are too slow. So my answer would be the half full glass is the growing awareness and the growing, let's say, realization how serious climate changes are. The half empty glass is the answer, the facts are too slow.
There is another question. Thank you for this beneficial webinar. I would like to ask you what do you think about the climate change policy formation in Turkey? How do you evaluate it? Do you think that it is top-down policy formation? And my final question is, how do you find the zero waste project is conducted by the Ministry of the Environment of Turkey? Thank you so much. Maybe someone from Turkey could give this answer. I don't know if you have any information about Turkey.
Yes, I would like to comment on this because the official policy of Turkey is available as national indicative contribution on the Paris Agreement website. So in Paris, when countries signed the Paris Agreement, they had to put in writing what their pledges and engagements and priorities are. And all countries publish their documents, including Turkey. So we can judge the engagements by Turkey, for Turkey, from there. That's an official document. Again, very well, there are new developments, not enough, however. It's the same critical remark that from our point of view goes also for the European Union. As I mentioned, Turkey, in spite signing the Paris Agreement, still did not ratify the Paris Agreement. So it means there was no vote in parliament, in the Turkish parliament, and in Turkey the Paris Agreement is still not a law. So this is a problem, of course. We know the reasoning which have been presented for this, but still we kindly ask Turkish authorities to ratify the Paris Agreement. Now, the Zero Waste program, just like other very positive programs by various Turkish ministers, is very good. Of course, should be generalized to the whole country, and if I may say also because Turkey has a big influence on the so-called Turkic republics. Also in the other countries with which Turkey deals, negotiates, and has influence on. So very well, but please, Turkey, if I had President Erdogan attending this webinar, I would tell him, Your Excellency, please do ratify the Paris Agreement and proceed with other useful national programs like the Zero Waste program.
Good morning, everybody. I want just to say sorry because I have a cold and these have been hard weeks for me, but we are here together. So let's start. I am Giorgia Borzagheti. I'm a journalist and deputy editor-in-chief of Giornalisti nell'Erba. There is an online magazine dedicated to environment and sustainable development. Giornalisti nell'Erba sounds like it's a pun. In Italian, it means to be in the grass means to be young, but giornalisti nell'erba is also on the green, as you may see in this picture. So that is the reason why is that we are young, actually not me, but our journalists are young, and we talk about environment. Giornalisti nell'Erba provides information for young people and through young people. In fact, our primary target are youngsters. Because you know that it's really important to talk about environment to the next generations, and also often our journalists are just the youngsters. This gives us a double plus. First of all, we educate for sure young people to sustainable development, but at the same time, by the reporter toolbox, students must search authoritative sources of information, understand and metabolize contents, and reproduce them with the languages of youngsters to the people, to their community. They became translators in this way of difficult and technical concepts such as environmental information has, and they spread this information to their family, their friends at school, reaching a secondary target. This does not want to be an advertisement for my magazine. It's just our way to join the climate actions, because we think that it's really important that common people, that civil society have to join the climate actions. Today we need to raise the awareness. Just the panelists before me were saying, and never as now do, we need to raise public awareness, because the civil society is the only weapon we have to defeat the climate change. Just let me here we have a picture of our young, our little journalist interviewed the Italian Ministry of Environment, and just to have a look what climate crisis is doing. This is a video from NASA, a climate simulation from NASA that show us what is going on our planet. Here we can see the temperature rise during the year, and overall during during the last year. And here we can see what is going to do to happen. Okay, it was just a video from NASA to see what is going on our planet and what is going on the surface air temperature on our planet, and what will happen in our next future if we are not going to do something for our climate and for our planet. So we have to stop speaking about recycling or shutting off the water while we're brushing our teeth, and not because it's not important, because actually it is. Every single action is important, but this is just the past. We have to look for our future, and it's really important to wake up the conscience of our governor. We must defeat the fossil fuel. This is our first target. Only civil society can change market needs. We need to lower CO2 equivalent level now, and think a new clean world with renewable and clean energies. The oil lobbies are fighting for their for their life, but for their survival, but they are dying because they have no future. But they are trying to gain 1 month, 1 minute, and just to go on, but we cannot afford it to them. But overall, we cannot afford it to us, because time unfortunately is over, and this is the call to action from the Madrid COP25. We have to change now. Okay, here we have another video from causes and effects of climate change. The video is from National Geographic, and I think that it's really interesting just to take a look.
Human activities, from pollution to overpopulation, are driving up the Earth's temperature and fundamentally changing the world around us. The main cause is a phenomenon known as the greenhouse effect. Gases in the atmosphere, such as water vapor, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and chlorofluorocarbons, let the sun's light in, but keep some of the heat from escaping, like the glass walls of a greenhouse. The more greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, the more heat gets trapped, strengthening the greenhouse effect and increasing the Earth's temperature. Human activities, like the burning of fossil fuels, have increased the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere by more than a third since the Industrial Revolution. The rapid increase in greenhouse gases in the atmosphere has warmed the planet at an alarming rate. While Earth's climate has fluctuated in the past, atmospheric carbon dioxide hasn't reached today's levels in hundreds of thousands of years. Climate change has consequences for our oceans, our weather, our food sources, and our health. Ice sheets, such as Greenland and Antarctica, are melting. The extra water that was once held in glaciers causes sea levels to rise and spills out of the oceans, flooding coastal regions. Warmer temperatures also make weather more extreme. This means not only more intense major storms, floods, and heavy snowfall, but also longer and more frequent droughts. These changes in weather pose challenges. Growing crops becomes more difficult. The areas where plants and animals can live shift, and water supplies are diminished. In addition to creating new agricultural challenges, climate change can directly affect people's physical health. In urban areas, the warmer atmosphere creates an environment that traps and increases the amount of smog. This is because smog contains ozone particles, which increase rapidly at higher temperatures. Exposure to higher levels of smog can cause health problems such as asthma, heart disease, and lung cancer. While the rapid rate of climate change is caused by humans, humans are also the ones who can combat it. If we work to replace fossil fuels with renewable energy sources like solar and wind, which don't produce greenhouse gas emissions, we might still be able to prevent some of the worst effects of climate change.
Okay, this video explains us what we saw in the NASA video. So human activity is the causes of the climate crisis, but it can be also the solution. we cannot give simple answers to a complex problems. To give an example, we often listen about the use of liquefied natural gas instead of diesel for our cars. But the LNG, that is the acronym of liquefied natural gas, is not a long-term solution for the future. Still today, scientific results about the CO2 productions from GPL versus gasoline are not clear, and for sure production of pollutants is not so different when we talk about modern cars. Moreover, when considering different type of fuel, we must consider all the production chain, since GPL is obtained from oil. Same considerations can be done today for hybrid and electric cars. Hybrid cars use only traditional energy above a certain velocity, but with a car that is heavier due to the presence of the batteries, it consumes more than a normal car. So for a full electric car, we must consider how the electricity we use to recharge our batteries is produced, and how batteries are treated once exhausted. This is what we mean when we talk about the entire production chain. We need to evaluate on a case-by-case basis. Everything could be a solution, but overall we need to reduce, and everything could be part of the problem. How can we do it? The human being activities are not sustainable for our planet. Just our existence is not sustainable at all. Maybe our planet would thank if we would die out, but we must find solutions that are sustainable as possible for our Earth. But there is not a unique solution. We have to listen science and to create a mix of solutions related to the specific case. We cannot give simple answers, as I said, to complex problems, because we cannot just an example, we cannot be supporters when we just read bio. Maybe you also can see our food is full of label with the read bio in the name, because this could not mean that it's sustainable. Just to give an example, we can talk about soy and food made by soybean that are considered green food, but since 1950, global soybean production has increased almost 15 times over, causing deforestation and displacement for small farmers and indigenous people around the globe. Most of the time, it is a large production made by the environmentally conscious companies that are most sustainable, because they can study their productions and reduce the impact on large productions. Moreover, conditions of our planet are constantly changing, so we have to evaluate this changing, and it means that what was previously a solution maybe now may no longer be valid. So how can we deal with it? We have to listen to scientists overall that are always monitoring global warming and finding new solutions, and we have to listen to them, and we have to fight overall fake news, because of course information is important, and we have to fight deniers and lobbyists, because we can do by raise awareness on global warming, on science our answers, and on new solutions and spread right information. And this is an important target that we can do all together, also civil society. This is an image from Arctic Sea coverage in 1984. This image is from NASA, and this is the same image, but it is from 2012, and we can see that the ice coverage is really different in less than 30 years. Here you can see, you can recognize Greta Thunberg, and want just to let you listen what she said about civil society, what civil society can do.
This is not a drill. My name is Greta Thunberg. We are living in the beginning of a mass extinction. Our climate is breaking down. Children like me are giving up their education to protest. But we can still fix this. You can still fix this. To survive, we need to stop burning fossil fuels. But this alone will not be enough. Lots of solutions are talked about. But what about a solution that is right in front of us? I'll let my friend George explain.
There is a magic machine that sucks carbon out of the air, costs very little, and builds itself. It's called a tree. A tree is an example of a natural climate solution. Mangroves, peat bogs, jungles, marshes, seabeds, kelp forests, swamps, coral reefs, they take carbon out of the air and lock it away. Nature is a tool we can use to repair our broken planet. These natural climate solutions could make a massive difference.
Pretty cool, right?
But only if we also leave fossil fuels in the ground.
Here's the crazy part. Right now, we are ignoring them. We spend 1,000 times more on global fossil fuel subsidies than on natural-based solutions.
Natural climate solutions get just 2% of all the money used on tackling climate breakdown.
This is your money. It is your taxes and your savings.
Even more crazy, right now when we need nature the most, we're destroying it faster than ever.
Up to 200 species are going extinct every single day.
Much of the Arctic ice is gone. Most of our wild animals have gone. Much of our soil has gone.
So what should we do?
What should you do?
It's simple. We need to protect, restore, and fund. Protect. Tropical forests are being cut down at the rate of 30 football pitches a minute.
Where nature is doing something vital, we must protect it.
Restore. Much of our planet has been damaged.
But nature can regenerate, and we can help ecosystems bounce back.
Fund.
We need to stop funding things that destroy nature and pay for things that help it.
It is that simple. Protect, restore, fund.
This can happen everywhere. Many people have already begun using natural climate solutions. We need to do it on a...
You can be part of this.
Vote for people who defend nature.
Share this video. Talk about this.
All around the world, there are amazing movements fighting for nature. Join them.
So even your actions are important. People has the power to choose for something produced by renewable energy and not by fossil fuels, for example. The power to vote, as the journalist in the video said, for a political decision maker who cares about the good of the planet and of our existence for sure, and not to enrich oil companies, for example. And this cares politics. Don't forget about it. Think about what a single 16 years old with braids did, just striking every day, every Friday in front of the Sweden parliament. She's not alone anymore. Fortunately, thousands and thousands of young people has joined the Fridays for Future movement. They are angry and they are right because it's their future to be in danger. Politics are scared about them and they are trying to put their actions down to lower the attention of the public opinion in what they are saying. But Greta Thunberg is just a symbol, the girl who decided to carry on her shoulders the weight of being a symbol of the fight for the climate change, for the climate crisis. She's just 17 right now, and she's loved and acclaimed as much as hated. She has become the target of many haters, but many more are the activists. I am thinking about Luisa Neubauer, that is the German Fridays for Future leader, or Arshak Makichan, that is a Russian climate activist that I had the pleasure to meet in Madrid at COP25. Arshak is 25 years old and got arrested by the Russian police just because he has organized a school strike. In Russia, you can strike, but just in isolated places like woods, so it has no sense. Arshak tried to get the permission for a strike in the center of Moscow to raise the public awareness, but when he got the 10th refuse, decided to strike anyway. When he got back to Russia from COP25, he has been arrested and spent 1 week in a prison just because he striked to raise common people awareness to climate crisis. And this is the video about my interview with Harshak, where he speaks about his story.
I said Russian Moscow government allowing to strike together only in the one place. And if you want to strike where people can see your strike, they refusing you, and it's illegal that they refusing you. And at the 10th time when they refused us illegally, I decided to strike anyway with other people, and some people joined me, and we were detained. Yeah. And I was waiting for a trial a long time, and they were afraid to call me the threat for the trial because I have a lot of international support. But they called me a month later after the strike. The strike was on October 25, and they called me a week before my train to Minsk and Berlin, Paris, Madrid. Couldn't attend the first trial. It was on November 28th. And yeah, I was represented there by the lawyer, but they decided to postpone the trial because they couldn't arrest me without my attendance on the trial. So when I will be in Moscow on December 20, the same day will be a trial, and most likely they will arrest me for a few days for organizing unauthorized protest, even though I sent an application and they illegally refused. The most important thing that they have to tell the truth to the people, because they lie about climate or they silent about climate, and they not telling the truth to the people. So people don't know that we can change something to fight climate crisis. People saying that seeing that something happening because there were huge forest fire in Siberia, there were floodings in Irkutsk region. People seeing it, but they don't know what we can do. And we are Fridays for Future trying to raise awareness about climate crisis and trying to tell what we can do in Russia to fight and climate crisis, to reduce our emissions. So we demanding a lot of things, but the most important is they have to tell the truth to the people, and then people will decide what to do.
I hope you could understand him because he has a very strong Russian accent, but it was he said what I said this before. He got arrested just to strike. He's still striking every Friday in the center of Moscow because, as I told you, it's really important to raise awareness because people don't know that they can do something for our our planet. We can just see the effect, some effects on our climate, but we don't know that that join the the climate activists is important, because we can just we have to loud our voices against our governor. During COP25, Fridays for Future and civil society made their voices loud. Giornalisti nell'Erba is attending COP since 2015, the Paris Agreement one, and we saw the civil society participation get big and bigger. During COP25, there have been many protest rally, and many people have undergone the badging. They were pushing out from COP25. The police removed their badges from access to the COP, and they were expelled. Civil society, this means that civil society frightens just civil society scares even during the COP. But we have not to forget that the transition will come. This is a fact. In Europe, climate change is a reality, and we can see the effects every day. Even here in Italy, in these last days, we have a lot of effect of the climate change. But in the next 10 years, as the activist in the video has said, we will see an exponential deterioration of our planet. I want just to let you see another video.
Una COP non ancora conclusa, ma una COP in cui la presenza dei giovani si è sentita. La loro voce era alta, anche se non sappiamo ancora se e come verrà ascoltata. Sono ragazzi di tutti i paesi del mondo, dagli opulenti Stati Uniti come da quella Russia che censura, dalla Svezia, dall'Uganda, dal Cile, dalla Nuova Zelanda, dai paesi ricchi e virtuosi perché per loro è più facile, come dai paesi poveri che diventano sempre più poveri a causa degli effetti del climate change. Ieri più degli altri giorni a COP25 hanno alzato la loro voce insieme. Era venerdì, era climate strike e volevano far capire.
Okay, sorry, this first part is in Italian. Just let me go in the second part, where we can listen the voices from the activists.
In the Arctic and in the North are the least responsible for climate change. Yet they pay the biggest impacts, and they face the biggest impacts and challenges. Because they live in the North, they see the melting ice caps every single day.
It was a question of survival and death. And I want to say that I am a victim of this whole climate crisis, and I'm not ashamed to say so.
What's going on this COP? I think there's been a lot of talking, a lot of high-level technical discussions, which I was trying to follow last week, and I got quite lost in the loss and damage stuff. I feel like there's a lot of talking and there's not a lot of heart, there's not a lot of humanity here.
For the next 10 years, we will be underwater if we don't do something. And that is what is so wrong with climate justice and climate change in my country. And that is why we need to do something as Canadians.
Okay, this is an example of what journalists in Ellerba can do, because the video was recorded and the interviews were recorded by Lara. Lara is 17 years old. She's our little journalist, and she's for sure a Fridays for Future activist, and she has been the youngest journalist in COP25. She has had interviewed all these young activists, and this is the way we use to speak to youngsters. The next 10 years will be crucial, as we already said, and we are in late because, as you may know, the Glasgow COP was cancelled because of the health emergency due to the pandemic, and for sure, pandemic is another effect of anthropogenic activity. Civil society plays a crucial role, as we said, and as the activists are saying. So your role, even your role, is important. Okay. As I was said, the transition will come, and there are no other other panoramas for our planet. And I want just to show you what is going on in Europe. This is the climate change in Europe. Yes, this is the right video. Sorry.
Climate change is already a reality, affecting ecosystems, the economy, and our well-being and quality of life. Globally, temperatures are rising, and extreme weather events such as heat waves, flooding, and droughts are happening more often and becoming more severe. Climate records are being broken year after year. Climate change is impacting nature. Local plants and animals struggle adapting to changes in weather patterns. Non-local species are spreading to new areas, some bringing new diseases affecting crops, animals, and humans. Different regions will be impacted in different ways. Climate change is also impacting the global economy. Changes to food production, trade, and access to key resources like water and fertile land can increase geopolitical risks also for Europe. No matter where we live in the world, we are all vulnerable to the effects of climate change. The impacts of climate change will depend on how effective our efforts are today and in the future. We need to drastically reduce the amount of greenhouse gases we release and, at the same time, prepare for a changing climate. Sharing knowledge is essential for climate change efforts. A greater understanding of how each region will be affected and what can be done to prepare for adverse effects can help us better face the challenges to come. In facing the impacts of climate change, inaction is simply not an option. We must develop a climate-resilient society through a combination of low-carbon technologies, resilient infrastructure, improved disaster preparedness, and other adaptation solutions. For example, using parks, ponds, and rivers in cities to absorb excess rainwater and to cool cities. All of which also helps improve our quality of life. Our environment and ultimately our well-being depend on what we do now.
Depend on what we do now. I chose this video because I like the animations, but actually this video is from about 3 years ago, and the situation has rapidly worsened. We must defeat the fossil fuel and reach early the net zero emissions. We will achieve the net zero emissions when any remaining human caused GHG greenhouse gases emission are balanced out by removing GHGs from the atmosphere. The transition will come, but we need to speed up the times. Otherwise, the effect will be disastrous. We only have 10 years to avoid it. How is a world with carbon neutrality? Here, the last short video that explains what we mean for zero net emissions. Here, it's explaining the carbon neutrality.
The relationship between emissions of greenhouse gases and climate change is a scientific certainty. To combat this phenomenon, we have the concept of carbon neutrality. Do you want to know what it is about? Every facet of our lives is related to the environment. From food, transport, and energy we consume to waste management. The way we produce and consume, based on the use of fossil fuels such as oil, coal, or natural gas, leaves a negative footprint on the planet. Carbon neutrality reduces the negative impact on the environment to achieve a net result of zero emissions. But how is it reached? First, with measures that reduce energy consumption as much as possible. Improve energy efficiency. Innovation in low-carbon technology. Increase the consumption of electricity from renewable sources and eliminate the use of fossil fuels that cause climate change. In short, emit fewer greenhouse gases. Today, it is still impossible to achieve zero emissions in many of our activities. Only when we cannot reduce our emissions of greenhouse gases, we will compensate them. How? Using carbon markets, where the sale of credits and rights between countries, organizations, and individuals take place in order to fulfill the agreement reached at the Climate Summit in Paris. Climate change is a global problem. We must think of global emissions to act efficiently and economically. Reducing and helping others to reduce is the same. In addition, many of the projects generated by the owners of these loans have a social and environmental component that contribute to sustainability. Summarizing, the way we consume energy is the main contributor to climate change, and carbon neutrality helps to change our habits and includes emissions reduction and renewable energy growth. In short, it is a responsible attitude to the environment that contributes to sustainable development.
Okay, we have to change our mind and not the climate. But I don't want to scare you because yes, of course, the situation is really serious. Sorry. Is really serious, and our actions are really important. But we have to think even in a resilient way. You are students, and you can just imagine which kind of job we will need for a natural solution. Which kind of researchers we need to find new technologies for carbon neutral emission. Even which kind of economists we need for the world that will come. Think about it, and you will find your opportunity. In the video, they speaks about the carbon market. This is the crucial point of the future COP, because they didn't find a solution for the carbon markets. But there are a lot of questions that are finding for answers, and you can find them. Your action can be really a solution, a small solution, but it can be a solution. The EU aims to be climate neutral by 2050, an economy with zero greenhouse gas emission. We have 30 years left, but the next will be crucial. So it's your turn. It's your turn. Actually, it's even my turn because I have two little children, and I find my small solution with Giornalisti nell'Erba and with the activity of Giornalisti nell'Erba, spreading informations and trying to reach youngsters. And you also can find your way to defeat the climate crisis. I want to really underline that it could be an opportunity for you. Just think about it. This is a short overview of the opportunities and challenges of climate actions. I hope I have not bored you, and I'm sorry because I have this cold, but I really wanted to be with you today. But overall, I hope I have inspired you in some way, because you are the future of our salvation, really. Raise the awareness, listen to the science, enjoy the climate actions, because we have no a planet B, and overall Earth is the only planet with chocolate. So think about it, and thank you.